Hello there, thank you so much for joining me for this very special sketchbook tour. I'm Omar, I'm a Burmese illustrator and artist living in the UK, and I filled up this particular sketchbook with crafts and artifacts I saw in the British Museum's exhibition called Burma to Myanmar. And I wanted to let you know how this came about. When I found out they were going to host this exhibition, I reached out to them, so it's just like their main switchboard. I emailed just randomly asking if I could have permission to sketch at the exhibition, and nothing happened for a few months. But then somebody from their communications department said, "We would love to have you on board." Before I forget, this is not a paid promotion. No money was changed hands. It was something that I specifically wanted to do because I am a Burmese artist and I was born out there. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my history as well. I was 5 when I immigrated to the UK, and I do actually have loads of very vivid memories of Burma. I was born in the north of the country, quite near the Chinese border. My dad was stationed there as just a general doctor in a very small hospital. And then we moved to various places. He was sent to wherever the government said he had to go as a doctor. So I have various memories of a lake where there were ducks, and also a banana grove. We kept chickens, and I just have still a very strong connection with Burma, even though it's been many, many years, and just thought this was the best opportunity to see more Burmese arts and crafts outside of the country since, if you don't know, there has been a coup, and it is incredibly dangerous for my parents to travel to where they have family. And I really wanted to cultivate a much deeper connection with my heritage and with my culture, because being here in England and not being able to travel back because of the coup, I just really felt I needed this right now in this stage in my life, because my children are also asking about Burma, and this is part of their heritage and this is part of their culture. And this sketchbook, I hope they will see how much it means to me to be able to do this. And I want to say that the people at the British Museum have been absolutely marvellous in trying to support my vision. They let me come to the early morning private views where they would open up this exhibition early for various people before the main museum opened, and I did that about 8 or 9 times. I was only able to use coloured pencil whilst I was there, so I would turn up with my sketchbook and just sketch a framework and the basic composition of each page, and then I would go home and, using the photos that I had taken of each of the exhibits, just paint them in as much as I could. So now it's time to take you over to the main sketchbook. Here we have my Burma sketchbook. It is number 48, and it is Hahnemuhle, 100% cotton. And this was the first thing I thought I could draw. It's actually a Kara white bird. It's actually a beetle nut box from the early 19th century, probably Mandalay, and it's made out of glass, rubies and gold. It was done mainly on location, and since I was only able to use coloured pencil, that's what I tried, and it was really, really tricky. I pretty much gave up and finished this off at home. It's a mixture of Posca pen on top because it's highly reflective, and I realised from this point onwards it was going to be a lot trickier. This note that I've written on the left hand side says perhaps I shouldn't have started this as the first page, but it's applying all the layers of colour and media that I've learnt a lot about colour and contrast. This one in particular was incredibly tricky because these panels are actually glass. There's a particular type of craftsmanship and it's all silver and mirror mosaics, and I just didn't know how to create that effect. What I ended up doing was a mixture of gelato and also neocolours and Posca pens for the highlights. It was another opportunity to learn a lot about contrast and how to bring things forward, as well as being incredibly decorative. I noticed this kitchen bag straight away because I actually have several versions of this myself, not as elaborate as this. This is from 1930s. My versions have less tassels. Again, it was just a beautiful creative challenge to try and portray the woven aspects of this, creative elements here, and how to give that impression of the different textures that were going on. This is coloured pencil over watercolour with a touch of Posca pen. This is a shirt cloth from the Kachin region, and I'm very attracted to anything Kachin because that's where I was born, in that part of Burma. And I've written here that my great-grandmother owned a weaving business in Mudon, so I am very much attracted to anything woven in general. This is mainly Posca pen over watercolours, and it's a very, very simplified version of what I saw at the museum. These birds were part of what was called a steering chair. Burma has many major rivers going down it, and people would use the rivers as transport. So this was carved out of teak wood and somebody sat on it, and it's a very, very elaborate chair, and I really struggled to get some of these decorative elements. I've got versions, much more simplified versions of these wooden style of carvings at home. This is mainly watercolour with a little bit of Posca pen. This Buddha statue was in the far corner, and it had a really bright light shining upon it, and people would walk past and create these shadows, and I tried to capture it. Often I was invited for the private view, so it wouldn't be as many people. I loved just observing people in general, and I'm going to show you a few more parts of this exhibition where there's people involved. Just wanted to point out the reflections. This is the same Buddha statue, but on the side it's a profile, and I'm really got to understand how to portray shiny surfaces. These were items that were at the beginning of the exhibition. That part of it was called the abundance of riches. Burma's varied landscape is home to many natural resources. I've written down here, we left Burma with smaller, less elaborate versions of these lacquerware goods, including trays, boxes, and even an ashtray. They live in a special display case at home at my parents' house. This is a san o. The literal translation would be a rice bowl, but it's actually an offering vessel, and it's decorated with rubies and gold and other gems. It's very golden. I had so much trouble trying to simplify things like this. My parents thought I did a pretty good job, so I got a thumbs up from them. These two items were pretty random. This was from fairly early on in Burma's history, sort of ceramic ware. I didn't know anything about it, but I really did love this vase. It was pretty huge. And also my mum's side of the family were potters. The village that they were from was known for pottery ware. Without going into the history of Burma and Thailand, there were different conquests as various kingdoms conquered each other. That was one of the main themes of the exhibition, because the borders were not rigid, it was very fluid. There was a flow of ideas and cultures and also arts and crafts. These figures were actually on a black background, but I decided to just lift them out and make them a lot more colourful. It's mainly watercolour with Posca pen. I've written down here, we have similar wall hangings of elephants and peacocks constructed in the same way. If you know my work, I really don't do details, I suggest details. So these silver objects were, I keep saying this, they were a challenge in terms of making sure that the essentials were included but also simplifying them down. Having the pre-prepared background ready definitely helped, because I was able to concentrate on the dark areas using watercolour or brush pen and the highlights using Posca pen, and I think that's really effective. There were items at the exhibition which I was really surprised to see, like this Shiva on a Nandi bull, which is more sort of Indian. You have to remember that Burma sits at the crossroads, and also we've got this Quran box. It's because there were Muslims and Hindus living in Burma, and my parents grew up with Muslim and Hindu friends at school. This is an example of a modern Kachin outfit, another of the main ethnic groups in Burma. By the time I got round to creating this page, I knew a lot more about contrast and just adding the essential details, and I didn't have to include everything, so I think you still get an impression that this was made out of beaten metal with lovely little embossing on it. This hat, the bodice with the silver decorative details and tassels, and also this woven skirt, they would have been handmade and just absolutely stunning. Beautiful, beautiful details. This was an unexpected surprise. It's a poster for condensed milk from the 1930s, and the little intro to this section was the modern printing techniques led to the explosion of printed materials, in part because of Burma's high literacy rate. They've depicted her in very traditional Burmese dress. My great-grandmother would have worn something similar and have her hair up in a similar way. At a certain point of the exhibition there was this archway, and you could look through to a video that was on a loop. It was about the coup and the subsequent Three Fingers movement to justice and democracy, and the first time I tried to draw it they told me I couldn't. I was trying to take a photo of it and they said no, because I think they were trying to keep the filmmaker safe. This one was when I went with my mum and dad. These two figures at the front are my parents, and it was really, really busy, and they were so happy to see what was on display and to see it in such really good condition. My dad was telling me, although they may have museums in Burma, they are not kept in this sort of condition, so he was very, very happy to see some of these artifacts on display. This is another advertising poster. It was actually for Sunlight soap, and it's a Burmese general called Maya Bandula who led the Burmese against the British in the First Burmese-Anglo War. I created this 30-second reel for Instagram to show the process of me sketching in coloured pencil at the museum, then working on it some more once I got home, then adding a watercolour layer to give it more depth and contrast. I don't actually know how to do Burmese lettering, but I just followed the poster and I think I've pulled it off. This is a map of the Shan regions from the late 19th century, and it took up quite a lot of room. It was quite a lengthy map, and people would
look at it and try and find some of the details within it. And I took quite a lot of photographs and tried to sketch some of these. That the lady nearest the glass case was done whilst there. I've written at the top, I've always loved observing people at museums and art galleries, what they seem most interested in and what elements they are happy to take a closer look at. Again, we have somebody else observing this Buddha statue. What was great was the contrast of this figure against the shiny golden statue. I actually prefer this version here to this one, which I don't think has quite enough details. This was from the middle of the 1850s. It's probably looted from Mandalay Palace. These figures are some of my favourite double pages in this sketchbook because they depict the male and female ethnic groups within Burma. There's over 130 ethnic groups, so we've got a female Kaya and a female Kachin and a Shan Hill tribe, a Shan drummer and a Shan Chinese. I really wish that there was a few more that could have been put on display because I absolutely adored them. My parents left Burma with a whole collection of very similar figures, probably more simplified. I just used to find them fascinating. I did find the textiles really fascinating. My great-grandmother ran a weaving workshop. I was just fascinated with the whole process. When I visited once, my great uncle was running it at the time and they were all hand woven. There would be ladies sitting there with the looms and it was just so beautiful to watch. The amount of effort that goes into creating some of these is phenomenal. Really beautiful, and I wish that I had the patience to try and capture it better. This was the best that I could do.
This is General Aung San. He was born in 1915 and played a key role in Burma's fight for independence. He's the father of Aung San Suu Kyi, and he was able to unite all the diverse ethnic groups in Burma, but was assassinated in 1947, just before Burma gained independence from the British. My granddad was actually at Rangoon University the same time as Aung San, and he would go to listen to his speeches and said how very powerful they were. I mentioned that the exhibition was really small and there really wasn't much space to talk more about Burma's most recent history, although there was a portrait of Aung San Suu Kyi, who was the symbol of peaceful resistance, but she did have a tarnished reputation because of the Rohingya crisis.
I wanted to include this because this is actually a bamboo tiffin box and I love tiffin boxes. I have such fond memories of my mum taking them on picnics. These are just random items that I was now trying to fill up my sketchbook with. Now this is my favourite part probably of this sketchbook. I wasn't even going to go to the dances from Myanmar that they were putting on at the British Museum, but my friend Mimi was curating this, so I thought, oh, I'll see what I can do.
It had been many years since I'd done moving life drawing at college, but I just thought, hey, let's just give this a go. You can see some of the proprietary sketches in the background, and I particularly like this one here in the top corner, which has a real economy of line, and I hardly had to do anything to it. The Burmese dancers were absolutely stunning. This lady is called Tai, and she had studied for years and years, and you can see some of this dance here.
This is actually a page of sketches that I did while Tai was performing. As you can see, they are just gestural marks. That's how they started off. This would have been done partly from photographs, but also underneath all that would have been the initial sketch. This has been done in coloured pencil, watercolour, and also Posca pen. I was sitting in the front row. I sat on the floor in the end just so that I could have a better view. You can see in this one in particular where there's still a lot of pencil in the background, and I had to sort of tidy this up once I got home, but I am so pleased that I was able to capture some of the emotive expressions. This dancer, Nay, he was so amazing. He was just bounding around like it was a circus show. He was almost doing acrobatics the way he was rolling around, beautiful movements, and his costume was just absolutely stunning. You can see again some of the gestural marks that I made whilst he was performing. You can see here in particular I couldn't get the angle of his leg quite right. I don't mind having the pencil marks showing where I've not been able to, rub them out, and I've changed my mind, and I think that really adds to this piece. There he is again, such graceful poses, and I wanted to give the context that all this performance was happening within the covered section of the British Museum. You can tell from that very iconic roof there. There was a lovely group from the Karen Community Association who did a series of dances. I didn't get a chance to paint up all of them. This was sketches that I made at the time. And there were also Shan Cultural Association dancers, and she was phenomenal.
Her costume in particular was spectacular. It was based on a mythical bird, so you've got all this structure that is attached to her costume. Also wanted to say a little something about the musicians. It does sound very unique, but it does share similarities with other traditional Southeast Asian music styles.
And this is Tai and Lewin, the two female dancers, and they very, very graciously posed while I took this photo of them. But overall, I just adore this image. Tai, this lady on the left, she performed a peacock dance, which is the national bird of Burma, and this construction of the costume with this section at the back which came up all sequined, really stunning, absolutely stunning.
That particular section took ages because I was adding individual Posca pen dots. Most of this is watercolour.
And finally, on the last page is my friend Mimi A, who curated this with her friend Zani. She was this tiny figure, if you can imagine how massive the British Museum is, and that's the banner that was hanging from almost the ceiling. And she did such a remarkable job, and I think over the course of this exhibition we became closer friends.
If you've made it this far, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video. It does mean an awful lot to me. This was a passion project. It took months to create, all the backwards and forwards, travelling into London and filling it in my own time. And I really hope that you have a better understanding of the relationship that I have with my culture. Thanks.